Oh, it did.
It did.
Ah, oh, yeah, that's better. I wonder if oh yeah, because the Carp Team England better now as well.
Oh, that's me. Yeah, that's me poster. So
Who
Dusto did that actually.
who did?
Dusto,
Ah, yeah,
Adam.
yeah, Adam
Yeah,
Dust. Yeah, 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 yeah. He did a logo for the last Northern Carp show. He
yeah.
did.
He's a good lad. I could do with propping this on something. Hang on a second. Right. Let me dig out one of many hard drives. See if we can. Oh, it's too high. Do it now. What are we doing now? Right. Uh, Typically, it was propped nicely against my computer, and now it doesn't quite reach. There we are.
We're in. Cool. Yeah.
Cool.
So many hard drives. Are you still doing the video editing and stuff and content and all that sort
Yes,
of
mate.
thing?
Yeah, yeah. We're all busy with everything. TV series is running at the moment, so still working with BT Sport. Sorry, still working with TNT Sports. Get the company right. TNT bought BT out a few years ago, didn't they? So yeah, doing that at the moment. Currently running. I think as we speak, there's a series of the European Fishing League, which is international predator fishing, which I've really got into. And then we start with the next series of On the Bank uh, in 3 weeks.
So
We're up again, mate.
yeah, without prying into your finances, um, there's a lot of videographers out there. There's a lot of people making some sort of decent content now. I had a look at a few things. I toyed with the idea of getting a canal boat a few years ago
Yeah,
and fishing some of the canals that I used to fish as a kid that I know I've 30s and 40s in, running from Oxford all the way up into, through the sort of Lee Valley, Relief, and I know there's some great carp fishing then. And I watched a canal boat series, a couple of homemade canal boat series without the fishing side of it, just the canal boat bit, and they'd clearly sold them to Amazon because they were on
yes,
Prime.
yeah, yeah.
So you're doing a couple of different series. Is it, if assuming you have content that people want to watch? I'm not talking about me personally now, but just for any budding videographers out there looking for avenues. Obviously, there's only so many jobs with the manufacturers.
Yeah.
If you've got a personality, and let's assume the content is something people want to watch, like is it? How would you even go about pitching to a TNT or an Amazon Prime or all that sort of stuff?
It's really, really tricky. It's always been tricky.
Hmm.
Anyway, like TV land has changed so much over the last few years. Streaming platforms are the way to go forwards at the moment if you want to get something done. Uh, but to be honest, like I've got a Prime channel, so
Yeah.
we're on Amazon Prime. When Amazon Prime set up originally, they were looking for content because obviously they wanted lots and lots of different interest out there. The problem with Amazon Prime is obviously everything has to be stored somewhere. So you can imagine if everybody is sticking stuff up there, it's a huge amount of storage.
Hmm.
So over the years, they've actually become a lot more selective over what they want and what they will take. So in the olden days, it wasn't quite like a YouTube channel, but if you were providing reasonable content, you could set up an Amazon Prime channel. Now you can't.
Well, how would you have got paid for that? So these canal boat ones, that's obviously what they've done. How would they get any revenue back from that?
No, it would all be on pay-per-view. So basically, it works in exactly the same way that YouTube works. That for every view you get a bit of commission on it, whatever that might be. So you can imagine the good thing about Prime is that it is a global channel.
Hmm.
So in the same way that YouTube is as well. So you might get 5 pence a view, which isn't a lot, but if you're getting 100,000 people watching a program, then suddenly that's 5 grand, and if you're getting 1 million people watching it, then it's 50 grand. So there is an option to generate revenue there, but it's really really hard. Like anything, the problem now is a problem for some, but it opens the door to many many people. But
Hmm.
it means that there is so much content out there that you've really got to stand out. So if you look at the broadcast world, originally, if you wanted to be on TV, you had to be good or you had to have a name.
Yeah.
Then what happens is YouTube comes out, and a few people stand out and do that, but it becomes available to everyone. So now you look at it, there is all sorts of, for want of a better word, shit on YouTube.
Hmm.
The some of it is actually it's entertaining. It's not necessarily made as well as it could be, or there's audio issues with it, or there's all sorts of issues with it. But there's so much now that actually you can have good content that's hidden because you never get to find it because there's so much crap out there.
Yeah, I was thinking that we've had this in the music industry for a long, long time. Ever since digital came, you used to have to, I was in rock bands in the 80s and
Yeah,
90s, and we used to book gigs in London, the ones where the A&R people would go to, the venues, then you'd invite all the A&R people from different companies. And, if you made a stir locally, even if they didn't turn up to the first 10 times you invited them, if you were making a stir, they'd
they hear
eventually
about you.
come and
Yeah,
and you would get noticed. Then everybody started complaining. The internet came, and it was very common because the exact thing you've just said. There's I think now I'm guessing this figure, but there might be 60,000 tracks in each genre released per day.
yeah,
Like, so it's, will the cream rise to the top? But it rises in other ways because, like I said, you make a stir locally, people
mm,
will take notice. Okay, something can go viral. That's people engineer viral stuff, but generally it's luck, isn't it? You've just made
yeah.
something that's right for the time and the era, and it's topical or something, and something can go viral. As many people, was it Lily Allen got famous through the internet, and
Yeah,
there's been plenty over the years, but surely with, I know what you're saying with the YouTube about some of it being really low quality. I mean, I remember a Terry Hearn video when he did that first sort of sit down one that he did with
yeah,
himself, and like this, he's coming out of one speaker, and I think it's Nick Hellier interviewing him,
mm,
coming out the other speaker. I couldn't watch it; it drove me mad. Like
yeah.
if you've got a sound system connected to your television, it's in stereo. It's
Thanks,
unwatchable.
man.
It's
Yeah,
unwatchable. I paid 13 quid for that DVD, and really,
yeah,
not DVD. It might have been a video. I can't remember now.
yeah,
But it's so obviously not everybody out there has got the technical knowledge that perhaps you have, but some people are just really watchable.
yeah.
Um,
I don't necessarily mean with the technical side of things as well. There's modern day means that everybody's got a phone. That means everybody's a journalist.
mm,
That means everybody's a film cameraman. That means everybody's a director. That means everybody's a presenter. And actually, some people are good and some people aren't.
yeah,
The issue is that there is that much out there that if you were to search carp fishing on YouTube, so much stuff comes up. And obviously the stuff that comes up is the stuff that's trending. So you'll see that more because it's actually popular.
mm,
So as with anything, good people and good content will always get airtime because it's good.
yeah,
What I'm saying is that there are some really good presenters that have done stuff, and it's very difficult for them to get off the ground because they get lost to begin with because there's so much other stuff out there. Eventually, if they carry on, they'll break through and will be noticed. But there's just so much that you've just got to get ahead somehow. And I think I was having a conversation actually earlier with somebody about how I liken the fishing industry to the music industry. That if you go back to the 70s, bands were popular because they were good,
mm,
they were talented, and they appealed to certain types of people. Later on, 80s, music changed completely. It was really weird in the 80s with
mm,
electronic music just starting to come in, with modern romantic or new romantic music coming in. Fashion was very, very different. But things got listened to that if you watch back now, they're not actually that good, but they were trendy at the time. So as a result, it wasn't talent that got them there, it was fashion. And then, when you look into the 90s, that was really the start of the boy band and the manufactured musician.
mm,
And then when you get to the 2000s, I would say that the manufactured musician is probably more prevalent than the talented musician. I'm not saying that the manufactured musician hasn't got talent. They've got to have talent to get up there. But
mm,
it's the era of boy bands and so on and so forth. There was something on the radio the other day, actually, that was talking about the number of bands that have been number one. And I think in this decade, there's only been two bands that have been number one. They're all solo artists now, rather than bands. So the era of the band is almost gone. But a lot of them are like manufactured artists. But is it also because people are breaking through with YouTube and social media? Ed Sheeran, prime example of it. So
yeah.
back in the day, if you wind the clock back, if you wanted to be famous, you had to be on the telly, and you got on the telly because you were good and already sort of had a following. Then you have to get into the magazines. In the fishing world, you need to get in the magazines. You got in the magazines because you were good, because the magazines chased you like a journalist. Then what happened is the advertisers got the power rather than the magazines, because they dictated to the magazines who should be in those magazines because they're paying the advertising. So you got, and I'm not going to say
is that your manufactured bands?
Yeah. So that's your manufactured anglers coming in. That there will be another angler who is being paid nothing by a company. He's getting a couple of packets of hooks and so on, but he is now their manufactured star. So they will push him to the forefront, and the magazines will take him because there's an advertising push. And then so the power went from effectively the magazines to the advertisers. And then what happened is that the manufactured anglers then became so popular with social media, because they've got their own platform now, that they now have the power.
Yeah.
And they can decide whether they want to go in the magazines, and they can dictate to the manufacturers whether or not they're going to work for them or what the price will be, because they've got their own following. And some of them have stepped on even further, and obviously they're running their own pay platforms now. So,
and then you've got the Instagram kind of element. So we discussed this on the Carpcast last week. You can have a girl, attractive, they're usually young, 15 to 20 years old, and they're holding a pretty 14-pounder. But because they're female in the male-dominated industry, they've got more likes than I've ever had on every post combined in 20 years, because they're a female in a male-dominated industry. It's great the women are in now. We've got the women's, England team, and many things around it. Lauren's been doing a lot for the women's sport, and it does seem. It seemed in the early days of the women, which is, in recent years, it was gimmicky, just attractive people trying to get attention, it seemed like. And now it seems we've got a lot of very serious women anglers, new women getting into angling that are into it. It's not just they found a little niche where they can get millions of likes and feed the Instagram ego dopamine hit.
You say that. Actually, there's quite a few male anglers that do that as well, that go onto Instagram just because they want, how many people are fishing for themselves and how many people are fishing for likes now. There's a lot of people, male and female, do that, isn't there?
I would say the top three popular Instagram male anglers wouldn't have got in the magazines 25 years ago. None of them. Not one of them, and that brings me back to the fishing content, like the YouTube stuff. So just cover quickly. I got friendly with a guy called Jody Borton. Have you come across Jody? He was a history and wildlife BBC producer. Became on a couple of trips abroad, and we got friendly. He's into his music, and he's in the Bristol scene, drum and bass and all that. But he also produced a lot of Jeremy Wade shows, the River Monsters and all that. So he was the guy that used to go to the place, find the story, research it, find the local guides, everything, set it all up, and then they'd go out and shoot it with. And he was saying the BBC look to the best YouTube fishing channels for their content. He says these companies, your Nashes, your Corders, your Thinking Tackles, all this stuff on YouTube get a lot more views than any specialist niche show on the BBC these days. Yes. And so the BBC look to the YouTube for I don't know, for inspiration, ideas, to see where the playing field is at the minute.
Yeah, it's interesting, because you can generally say that YouTube's different because of the way that it sells the programming to you. So you can link other programs into it. It's always suggesting things. There's an algorithm behind it, whereas there isn't an algorithm behind TV. It's purely selected. So what you're fed is basically what they think you want to see. Whereas with YouTube, with social media, what they're fed is what they know you want to see. And there's a huge difference between what they think and what you know. So I have absolutely zero interest whatsoever in Love Island or anything like that. None at all. I don't think I've ever seen a program. However, loads and loads of people do. And if you were to look through my Instagram feed or my my social media feeds, you'll always see things that I'm interested in, because that's how the algorithm works. That's it. So yes, they will look at what's popular and what's trending, but there's an awful lot with social media that trends for a very, very short period of time. For old music parlance, there's a lot of one-hit wonders out there.
I still think the fishing content, I'm talking about the YouTube stuff, not your stuff. I remember having a marathon of your On the Banks while I was playing poker one time in a casino in London. They had it on all day, and it was you all day, in the Vic, which is the biggest global casino.
Pleasure,
I was 8-10 hours playing poker. It was you all day long. Every time I looked at the screen, like a back to back, like they used to do with the Matt Hayes stuff on Discovery back in the day. All weekend it was permanent. How much would he have made off each reshow of those? Because that was every weekend for years, wasn't it? Literally 10 programs a day, more maybe. 20 maybe. What would he have got for each episode of that, would you think, on Discovery in them times? There was no YouTube then.
No, you don't get anything extra. Once the program's made and it's gone, that's it. They're licensed. So the license with the TV, we make 25 programs a year. There's 15 sport reports, and then there's 10 on the bank show magazine style programs. And when we made them, that's it. It doesn't matter how many times they show them. We don't get any extra or any less money for it. It's a case of they can broadcast as often as possible. The only thing I'll say is if it was at the weekend and it was on all the time back to back, probably the cricket had been rained off. And if the cricket, because one of the things with working with a live sport channel is live sport takes priority over everything else.
Yeah.
So if there's football on before us and it's a cup final game, then if it's a 0-0 draw and it goes to extra time, whatever's on after it is bumped. There's no question. They're not going to knock the football off because the fishing's on at 9 o'clock. It's a case of, right, the fishing's gone. The good thing about us is that fishing doesn't date. So as a result, it's really good. So if the cricket was scheduled for a live test match of 8 hours of cricket and it's rained off, there's only a limit to how long you can watch David Gower standing there at Lord's saying, you know what, it's pissing down the rain still. So come back to us at 11 o'clock. They've got nothing to talk about. So as a result, we get bumped on again. So, for what the Lord giveth, the Lord taketh away, I suppose. Is
that the equivalent of like making a Christmas song, knowing that you've just got it for life?
The amount of people that, I don't know what it is. There's obviously a lot gone out recently, but I get I bump into a lot of people both in supermarkets primarily, but also quite recently airports, of all things. Anywhere that there's a lot of people, there's always going to be anglers, and loads of people come up and they go, "Oh, I saw you on the telly last night." I had no idea what it was. Could be anything. So, because it might be last night's show, in which case it was the European Fishing League where we're fishing for big zander up in Finland, or alternatively it could be a rerun where I've got roach in the Hampshire Avon somewhere. So it's quite interesting. They just rerun stuff all the time. So, but that's good.
What's your opinion? I'm not talking about your stuff. Obviously, you've been doing a lot of the match type coverage, and obviously you were doing stuff with England. But like your general about. I don't watch a lot of fishing content. Like I've never been interested in it. I never really used to read the magazines, apart from when I was young and really, really hungry. But, since in the last 20 years, since I've been working within the industry, it's like a busman's holiday, I don't really do. But when I've watched it, it's never changed. It's just monotone voice talking to the camera. Like it doesn't seem too creative. It just seems not to have evolved, and I've got into a guy called Matt Armstrong. I'm sure many people watch now. He's one of the biggest. He's amazing. I'm not into cars. I am not into cars. Like I've never been a petrol head. I know you've liked your rally stuff and you've had the rally cars and driven and stuff, but he's made, I can't wait for every video, I'm in, because there's a story within every episode, which is obviously important with this stuff. But can you ever see somebody doing a fishing program that makes non-fishermen watch? Bob Mortimer maybe, and what's his face?
Paul Whitehouse. So
Paul Whitehouse,
I think they've done a fantastic job. But ultimately, fishing is the vehicle for them to present the program that they're presenting. It's not the reason for the program. They could be doing anything. They could do that program playing golf. They could do that walking dogs. They could do it walking up hills. You know, it's just, I suppose what it adds to the programming is the ability to sit down with a friend and talk for a long period of time. Yeah. Because if they went to football, they'd be distracted by something else. But fishing is the sort of thing that you can do with someone else, and it doesn't actually take an awful lot of your time if you just want to sit there and relax.
So looking at the Matt Armstrong thing, like I've got an interest in how engines work, you know, when he's telling about the you know, if you get water inside it and the rod goes up and it can't compress and blah, you know, and he does it so succinctly and briefly and quickly that a non-car head still enjoys it. So is there a fishing equivalent of that?
Because you said car head, it's petrol head.
Yeah, there you go.
Look, the key thing with Matt Armstrong, he has always got a smile on his face.
Yeah.
Hasn't he? And there's something in TV that people love, and that's a bit of jeopardy. Will he, won't he? Is it, isn't it? You know, what's going to happen there? Is there going to be a success or a failure? And he's such a happy presenter.
Yeah.
You know, occasionally there'll be a bit of seriousness with him, but he's always smiling. Even when he turns around and goes, you know what, I just bought a Lamborghini, thought it was great, but it's hydrolocked and I've got to buy a new engine. It's going to cost me 30,000 quid. He's smiling.
So it's easy to smile knowing you're going to make 30k off that video, though.
Yeah. But I think the key thing with him is that he's a very watchable person because he's always enthusiastic, and anybody
he's real, isn't he? He's genuine, but like that doesn't exist in fishing content. I don't think. You know, most of it's boring. I don't want to call anyone out or name it, but I'm telling you, I've seen bits of all of them, and none of it makes me want to watch. You know, occasionally the Corda stuff because, you know, they might have the technology with the underwater stuff or whatever, but generally it's monotone talking head at a camera, and it's, you know what's coming. Like there's no surprises. There's no. You know, and it's like in the YouTube clips as well. I hate it when it's like, you know, even in the poker content, it's the same. Can Spraggy win £1 million in this tournament? Well, if I've learned, if the titles say "Can I?" it's no. No. Yeah. Yeah. So it's, you know, can Jamie catch the 50-pounder from Burfield? You know, well, probably not in this video because it says can he, you know?
Yes. Can he? He can, but he's not going to. Yeah, you know, not now. We might.
Yeah, because you know how these algorithms work. It would say Jamie Clossick catches record fish. You know, it would say that, not can he do this or will he, or, you know, it's so. But it's all just really predictable. And maybe we're just old, and I'm looking at it through 35 years of carp fishing. But
been there, done that. Well, look, you know, there's always things to learn. There's cycles as well, you know, new people come into sport. This was always the argument when the same old magazine feature gets wheeled out, dusted off and printed again for the 16th time in the last 4 years, you know. But there's new people that come into sport, they get sort of entertained by it. It's been really interesting. You touched on underwater, and it's been really interesting actually because everybody is looking at underwater now. And I'm not going to say I find that boring, but some of these amazing discoveries that people are just finding out, they were discovered 15, 20 years ago when we were doing it first.
Yeah, I remember you were right on that in the early days. But the thing is, think about underwater, it will never get boring because we were always guessing above the water, always, and it answers those questions. You know, it's the same when you first start boat fishing and you can see your rig on the spot, you know, and I'm guessing some of these bait boat guys with winch cameras, it's that same thing. And being able to see you get done underwater or what they're actually doing, or if you've got any bait left, like, it's just, I mean, maybe it takes some of that mystery away, but no, you know, most of those underwater, they have to do it in shallow water for the light, so it doesn't really equate to most fishing situations, I don't think.
No, it doesn't. I think one of the things that's been interesting for me is seeing how fish feed. But when you've seen how fish feed, actually, there's this groundbreaking film about how fish feed, and then someone else will bring another film out, and there'll be a groundbreaking film about how fish feed, and actually they're feeding very similarly to the last one. And there's half a dozen different people that are doing the same thing at the moment by shoving a camera in the edge and having a look at, you know, I'll call it manufactured, but they're setting a spot up, sticking a load of bait on it, and the carp's coming in and spitting the rig out. So it's just it's just what happens, Jay, isn't it? Everything's cyclical.
Yeah.
So, but it shows to me that I think people have exhausted an awful lot of new stuff, and there's nothing new coming out. Nobody's been really inventive on it, because actually what's happened is all of the main producers now of content now are all doing exactly the same thing. Where they're all looking at their own thing, actually they haven't. And you look at Ali, you look at Elliot, you look at the Corda guys, you look at Guru. Everybody is now doing exactly the same thing, which is sticking a camera underwater and doing that. So, what's the longevity of watching underwater stuff on a static camera? It'll always be interesting, but actually it'll have its day soon, and then hopefully there'll be more creativity elsewhere. Yeah, I thought Urban Banks was brilliant when it came out. I thought it was absolutely fantastic. It was inspirational. It was really well filmed. It made you really do stuff.
That's the exception, I would say. Say now it changed me. It made me buy a camper van and go to some of those places. It did really inspire. So yeah, I would say that's one exception.
You look at Jacob Worth's films. Where he caught from the dock, where he was fishing on the canal. I thought they were absolutely fantastic. I very nearly went out like looking at Terry's films, sitting on the river in his boat, catching 15 bream a night before he catches the big one. I wanted to buy a boat and move on the River Thames. So there's a reasonable amount of inspiration out there with films, and it's doing something different. Mark Pitcher's prime example, when The Challenge came out, absolutely hilarious.
Yeah.
Completely different to anything that had been done before, because he as a character has got such a funny way of doing things and his mannerisms. And then when there was, they broke the rule of having interaction with the camera. In TV land, you don't interact with the camera, but actually him and Harry, there was that conversation going on between the cameraman and the star, which should never happen. But immediately what it did was it brought the person into the program. The viewer was in the program with them. And it was great. So I thought that was great. But the downside with all of these things, obviously, is that they only have a certain life expectancy before they become
tired. Yeah.
Tired. I'm trying to pick the tired.
Well, not exhaustive. Not exhausted, exhaustive. So like Urban Banks, I know. They ran out of these interesting places to go. I'm sure there are more in the world, unless you've got the BBC budget and you can go to the Zambia or God knows where. It's you kind of
the same thing. Then it'll still be exactly the same thing. It's just a different place that they're going. But that's why I think the rule of three is very apt. That's why trilogies work very well. So you've got, whether it's 3 minutes making a program, you've got a minute to get them, a minute to hold them, a minute to lose them, or whether it's 3 films. As soon as you go more than 3 of anything, it gets a little bit tricky.
Oh dear. It's the third time we've relaunched the Carpcast.
but if in 3s, it's perfect. Then you're on the third. But the time passes. There's always something new to talk about. There's tactics and tips and other bits and bobs like that. There's new things that come into the equation. There's new places to go. There's everything's cyclical.
So I know we probably didn't plan on talking about the fishing TV industry, but tell us about you then. It's been a year or two since we spoke. What's your journey been?
Well, I've been working for Outlaw Pro for 3 years nearly now, which has been really interesting. So that's been good, looking at, I suppose, the business from a slightly different angle, because I've never really been involved in the retail side of things. I've still been doing primarily media, but it's been interesting seeing the retail side of things. And the retail business at the moment is very, very tricky. Everything's always been pretty cutthroat. It's such a shame that you see, every week there's a fishing tackle shop dropping out somewhere in some way, shape, or form, and it's tough. It really is tough out there. It's a shame, because I think it's a problem for recruitment, because I know that the local fishing tackle shop was one of the reasons why I started fishing. If you don't know where to go, where do you go when you're starting out? So it's a thing. It's a problem.
So you're plugged into the industry generally. If ever I want to know something about something, I usually call you. you've always got your finger on the pulse. So this cost of living, most people are feeling it now. I think next year is going to be a real tough year for a lot of people. Like how is the fishing industry as a whole? I heard when we first started the Northern Angling Show, I think we had data from the EA, 1 point something million rod license sales at the time. Somebody told me it was 500,000 this year.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what the figures are now. Certainly, it certainly dropped to upper 600s.
Right.
So it's not fantastic. We had a spike with COVID, where there was a lot more people went again, so that was good. And there's all sorts of things that make a difference. That we've noticed just over the last 4 weeks, 5 weeks, maybe, although it's just picked up this last week, that people just aren't going fishing. It's been crap. Carp fishing in particular has been dog shit, hasn't it? That there's been virtually nothing come out. There's been pockets of the odd fish or the odd result coming out, but on the whole, it's been pants.
Yeah, I've actually really got the buzz back, and I've been quite a lot in the last few weeks. I took a winter ticket on Trent View in Nottingham. It looked perfect for winter. You can park in the swim, so I can sit in the van with the heater on. It's got a lot of fish in there.
Yeah.
I caught on the first session. I've had 2 blanks since. And I saw your post the other day basically saying that, there's a variety of reasons why you think it's crap, from the dying weed to the high pressure, the oxygen issues maybe. But everywhere's fish crap. But odd lakes have done the big ones.
Yes. And, you'll have people that are cynical about it go, oh, yeah, that always happens. That's, the big ones.
It's never happened like this, not for a long time.
I'm very, very well aware of what's going on in the trade. I'm very well aware of captures, and have been for a number of years. For a start, with the old Carp Team England head on, I'm always looking at who's performing and who isn't. From a commercial point of view, I'm always looking at whether people are going or not. From a TV point of view, I'm always looking for filming opportunities. Is something really happening? In which case, do we need to jump on it? And should we go out and make a film about it? It's been rubbish. And it's been as rubbish as I can remember it for a very, very long time. There's always little blips and glitches, but we had that anticyclonic high pressure that stuck over sort of North Sea really for about 4 weeks. It just sat there not doing anything, and that's really unusual for October, November. As a result, there was an oxygen issue there. Water temperature's still high. Mate of mine netted his lake the other day, still 11 degrees.
Where's that? What part of the country was that?
That's Somerset.
Yeah.
So, 11 degrees is very warm for now. Even though we've actually, we've had a bit of frost, we've had a bit of snow, but the water temperature is back up to 11 degrees because the air pressure's been high and there's a lot of rain on it. So, it's been a weird one, and it's very easy to turn around and go, oh, yeah, it's the weather, isn't it? But actually this year, I think it's certainly environmental and climatic conditions that have made it hard.
So do you think there'd be more people out fishing if fish were getting caught? I mean, it sounds fairly obvious when I say it out loud.
Look, let's go very basically on this. It's not really that cold, is it?
No, it's not uncomfortable. There was 1 week where we had minuses every day,
But it's still pretty warm, and you would think that it's good fishing weather. In addition to that, we've got a big southwesterly coming in again. There's another of these rolling storms. This is Dara, so it's the 4th one of the year already. So you would think, whenever there's a big southwesterly, you think, great, we've got to get out there. It's worth looking at. But I think because no one's catching anything, less people are going. If you go and you blank for 2 or 3 times, you might think, you know what, I'll leave it this weekend. I'm not going to go. And I think there's been that decline. And we've noticed it with catch reports in the Angling Times. We've noticed it with social media posts. We've noticed it with footfall through the shop. We've noticed it with online sales and purchases. Less and less people are going fishing.
And do you think some of it is just straight up carp fishing is not cheap? So, if you do want to go fishing, okay, you've got to buy your food. Even if you're at home, you buy a few extra bits you wouldn't normally, especially if you're a family guy, you kind of can't just strip the cupboards and take it, do you? You've got to buy stuff just for you. But then there's, bait is not cheap. The fuel's not cheap. I know it's come down a bit from what it was at its peak, a year or so ago. But
I think all of these things are secondary contributors. The main thing is, if you hear that Trent View is fishing its absolute plums off,
I'll be there next week.
You're going, aren't you? But if you hear that Trent View is absolutely dog shit at the moment and nothing's been caught for 3 weeks, and somebody did manage to catch one, but it was on a pub chuck zig, then you think, you know what? I don't know whether I want to be brave enough to be the 30th person to go there and blank.
That's why I'm at home this week. It's the exact reason, it's. I mean, I will do a lot, but it's it's not inspiring, is it? You do 2 blanks, and the second one was a week blank as well. It was a long. Okay, I could have really persevered on zigs. I'm at an age in my life where I want to catch them on my terms. Even when I'm in Croatia and stuff, I know I can catch them in the day. I reel in at night. What if you miss these bites? You're still paying €30 a day or €50 a day for the day ticket, whatever it is. But I'm like, I want to catch them on my terms now. If I can't park in the swim, if I can't do this, if there isn't a nice supermarket nearby, or it's got to be on my terms. It's not, I'll do whatever it takes to catch those fish. It's the other way around.
I think it just depends on what you want to do, doesn't it? There's times where I'm absolutely desperate and I'll do whatever I need to do to catch, and other times where you think, you know what, I'm here for the company and it's quite nice just to have a chill out. So,
exactly. I've got the buzz though. I've not had it for a few years. I've only gone fishing where I've had mates coming to visit and stuff abroad, but I did a week on a wild lake right at the end of the season this year before I drove back to England, and this lake was 28 kilometres long, 3 kilometres wide in places, and just so interesting. I did a week there. It was the happiest I've been in a long, long time. And I had a 4-pounder and an 11-pounder, in a week, and I was buzzing because I know there's uncaught 30 kilo fish in there. Seen drone footage of them, but I was just like, wow. Anyway, since I've got back, I'm like, I've just had to go fishing every week. It's something's changed in me again, and it's happened before. Comes and goes, doesn't it? I think, I've been in the past through. I caught the lady out.
It's amazing what stimulates you, isn't it? I've been doing a lot of coaching through the course of this year. So since I retired as England manager, I started doing a little bit of coaching. Loads of people for years have said, do you do any coaching or tuitions? And it's like, you know what, I just don't. I haven't had time. Whereas through the shop, I thought, you know what, as another service to the shop, it'd be quite nice to be able to do that. I have really enjoyed coaching. It's been absolutely fantastic. I've everybody bar one has had a 30-pounder.
Oh wow!
On the coaching trips as well. It's been absolutely superb, and it's made me fish harder, albeit that I'm fishing surrogately through the people that are there on the course. So I take 2 at a time, and literally it's a case of, right, what are we going to do? What would you do in this situation? This is what I think we should do. Let's do a bit of yours, a bit of mine, and see how they work. It's very much. It's not just a case of fishing. It's more understanding what and why you do things. Because I think it's easy to teach people to cast 100 yards, but if they don't need to cast 100 yards, what you need to do is teach them why they need to, when they need to, and how to do it, rather than just, this is how you cast 100 yards. So it's been very, very rewarding seeing that, and that's got my bug back. And I think doing a load of coaching this year, because again, it's been on a syndicate lake, I've really put an awful lot into my fishing on the syndicate lake, rather than just going for the sake of having a bit of a social or a bit of a fish. I've been putting an awful lot into it. So when I do go there coaching, I'm absolutely on the top of my game. And it's been great. It's been really, really good fun. But here's one for you, and I don't know if you saw this post. Commons v mirrors. And it's been a real head scratch for me, but I have caught, and my customers have caught, a significant number. I think we're up to 21 30-pound commons this year. And the mirrors outstrip the commons 3-1 in the lake. And yet I personally have had one 30-pound mirror, and I think I've now had 17 30-pound commons.
Have you had a look at the dates you've been going? Obviously, you've been going whenever you get bookings or whenever you can go, I guess. But have you coincided any of these captures with the moon?
It doesn't make any difference. No, I haven't. Because
I found, I think commons are more predatory than mirrors, right? I've seen all fish spit fry out, but I've seen more commons, definitely. I know of a couple of big commons, 30-kilo commons in bled and stuff, that only come out on lures.
Yeah,
and it's the only times they've ever been caught. They've never been caught. So I don't know why. It could just be a small sample size of of my own experiences, so not a good example. But if anyone else is listening to this, comment. I think commons are more predatory, which is why I think that we've got this big common full moon type theory that commons definitely, I've seen it on lakes, commons definitely become more active in some lakes that I've observed around the full moon. Now, is that because of the light levels? It's better for hunting for them. So I've seen it.
Yeah. I'm putting it down to the fact that I think it's the way that I'm fishing and the spots that I'm fishing, and that it's more down to certain fish like certain areas and will feed in those areas more than others.
And what bait? I think there was Nash used to do a bait years ago that always seemed to catch more commons than mirrors. Everybody used it. Amber trout, and one of them was a tangy one. I think it might have been the tangy squid. I think. It definitely used to catch more commons. So that could have just been luck with that type of bait, because I've seen it happens, but I've seen fish in lakes where you've been watching them like a snag tree, where they, every time you go on the lake, you look under that snag tree and there's always a group of fish there every single time you go. And I've seen it where the mirrors are active and the commons are just sat underneath, lower, deeper in the water, not really interested, whereas the mirrors are searching. And then as the full moons approach, the commons have took over and they're the ones that are up active, looking like they're going to get caught. They're the ones kind of hunting, you see them first before the mirrors. So I've definitely seen that's a thing. Why that is, I don't know, but that big common full moon thing does seem to be a thing. So is it to do with the predatory? Is it the type of bait?
I definitely think there's something in the moon phases, without any shadow of a doubt. And there was, I can't remember the last big full moon, whatever it was, but there was one of the lads in the office went, "It's big full moon tonight, I'm going to go because the common's due, blah blah blah," and he caught it that night. And that happens too often for it to be coincidence, but nobody can put the finger on exactly why it is, but there's definitely something in it. But with these, it isn't necessarily the big commons. It's, although don't get me wrong, they're 30 pounders up to 39 pounds, so they're bloody big enough. But it's ridiculous how often it's a common. The amount of 30 pound commons is mad. If I'm going to catch one, it's going to be a 30 pound common.
I've got an unusually high tariff of big commons in England as well. From both the Tatton ones, the ones out on Ashes, Farfen. I've had a lot of big commons, 35, 40 plus over the years, and a few 50s from England. Is there just the way I fish? The types of bait that I prefer? I don't know.
It's become a standing joke in the office now. So, because the other lads go on there and they can't catch commons, or if they do, they're catching the odd common now and again. But it's like, how'd you get on last night? I had one, 30 pound common, was it?
Is there anything obvious in your rigs you do different to the average angler on there?
I'm using a pink pop-up on a Ronnie.
Yeah, so no.
I mean, what is it? What is it? It's just, it's madness. It is absolute madness. Other people go on there with a pink pop-up on a Ronnie and they don't catch a common.
So there's something else, your pheromones maybe.
I don't know, I must be female, that'll be it. Let's not get on pheromones.
Yeah, well.
Yeah, there we go now. I just got back from Crete Lakes.
Yes, we touched on that the other day on the phone. You some interesting occurrences over there as well.
Yeah, it was really good. But just as a matter of point, there was a prize for the biggest common and the biggest mirror, and I won one of them. Guess which one it was?
Not the mirror.
So I had the swirly tail common. It's at 61.2 or 61.4, I think it was. But yeah, it's genuinely, mate. It's uncanny.
Is there anything you're doing differently from you previous years?
You know what?
Like baiting style, how you baiting, regular feeding, are you fishing a lot of small bits that's maybe attracting little fish into the swim and the commons are there because they're predatory? Anything that...
I've had them on boilies, I've had them on zigs, I've had them on clumps, I've had them over bait.
But are you spotting regularly, match style or anything like that, or
no? It's just, it might just be a run of coincidence. So it just don't know. I'm perplexed. I don't know. On the one particular lake that I'm fishing, my syndicate lake in the UK, I think it's down to spots.
Mm.
I don't get me wrong. I had a few mirrors out of the Creek Lakes match as well, so they weren't all commons. But lo and behold, I had the biggest common on the complex. So there's definitely something. Went to Hungary earlier in the year. Similar sort of thing there. I think my 5 biggest fish were all common. So it's mad. It's mad. But yeah, Creek Lakes, good fun.
So tell us about it. I've never actually been. I did Daryl do a video on there. Was it Thinking Tackle or something last year or year before? I've seen, or Ali, one of them. I've seen it crop up, and I don't know why it's a thing. So what? Tell us about the lake.
It's the complex of lakes in France, and they obviously it's a holiday complex. They've got 5 different lakes on site there, and at the end of the holiday season, the first week used to be a bailiffs match, and then what they did was the bailiffs used to invite the odd regular back again, and then suddenly developed into let's stick a tenner in the pot and have a bit of competition. And over the years, I think it's been going 10 or 12 years now. It's developed into quite a big competition. So there's thick end of 20,000 quid up for grabs.
Oh, wow.
Across various different prizes. And for a few years, the guys have said, you're going to come over, and it's always been difficult because it always coincides with my birthday, and I always used to have my own little birthday trip. But this year I went over, and yeah, it was really cool. It was quite nice because it's one of those places that any holiday venue at the back end of the season, you've got to be a bit sneaky on. You can't just go out there and leather a load of boilies and expect it to happen, because
they've been hammered all year, haven't they?
Yeah, and however clever you think you are, they've had the thick end of 6 months of a new customer coming in every single week. And if you think it's booked solid, it's a great complex, and whatever you think you might be doing differently, you're probably not. At some stage through the course of the year, you'll have seen it. So you've got to be really, really sneaky with it. And it was quite nice. I drew a peg that was in a corner, and I was looking at it. All the pegs on the lake that I was on were taken, and I've drawn a little corner. I've gone there with me 3 3/4 pound test curve, stepped up. You've got to be careful, because if you're on Lake 5, we need to be casting 140, 150 yards, and it can be long range. And I've gone and drawn a corner peg with an electric pylon over it, and the underarm sling was about 20 yards. So completely the wrong kit. Stupidly, I didn't take a smaller set of rods with me, and it was a case of, right, what are we doing now then? And ended up thinking the lake's full. I'm in a quiet corner, which is actually not too bad. And one of the bailiffs said that nobody normally fishes this swim because it's very restricted.
Beautiful.
So that was music to the ears, because as soon as you get a little bit of information like that it's not normally fished, every other peg on the lake's fished. The competition starts at the same time. Everybody's going to be spotting at the same time and making a load of noise. So you know what? I'm just not going to fish. And ended up not fishing for the first part, just to let the fish go to where they know they're safe. And then literally just fishing really, really quiet off the edge of it, letting them go in the corner and picking them off as and when they were thinking of wandering out. So,
and that big common probably paid for the trip, did it? If there was money on everything.
Oh yes, mate. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it was very good. So yes.
Did you win any other prizes? Did you get, obviously, if you had a few big ones, did you get like an overall prize? Or
yeah, there's a prize for the biggest 5, and so it's the combined weight for the biggest 5. So come second in that one, unfortunately, the Ricky and Sam on Lake, I think they were on Lake 5, won that one. They did the double because they won the overall weight as well.
Right.
Won the lake, got the runners up prize overall, got the runners up prize for the other one. Got the prize for the biggest £60. They got the prize for the first common, and luckily enough spawned the casting contest too. So it was,
yeah. So who was worth taking the big runs?
I think there were 8 prizes. Me and my partner Stuart, we managed to sweep 5 of them, which was quite cool.
Wow, that's a nice
That
little.
sounds cocky saying it like that. I don't mean it to sound like that, but
no, so it's a good. Well, former Carp team England manager. Like, you've got to lead by example.
Oh mate, the banter was hilarious, because obviously I'm in this underarm corner peg, so there's a casting competition on the reeling, and everyone's going, "Come on, then England, show us what you can do." And there was a few other lads there from the England team, and Rob Burgess was there, and a few. To be fair, you got Scottish internationals, 3, 4 England internationals. I think there were 4 different British champions there. So it's become quite a big competition. It's not just a few mates going out for a knock-up. There's quite a few hefty people that go there over the years now. And there's 50 blokes there all going, come on, show us what you can do then, is you've got to line up and try and put a lead in a dustbin, whatever it was. And so it went in the dustbin, went clang, and that was it. That's another 500 quid. Thank you very much.
Beautiful. And going back to what we were talking about, the swim nobody wants in the corner. How many times in your life, because it's happened a lot in mine, where, because I'm that guy that doesn't want to go in that swim in the corner, but I've seen it so many times where the big one or the rare one gets caught from there, because they learn, don't they? They learn that, hang on a minute, it's the safest place on the lake most of the year.
Oh, I love the one in the corner that nobody wants to go in. Like genuinely, because I love my margin fishing as well. So a lot of the time I'm in the edge. I'm looking for somewhere nice and quiet. If you're looking around, there's the point, the oak tree, the sunken plateau, that every single person that fishes that peg will put it in the same place all the time, and that's good because the bait goes in there. But it's bad because the fish know that it's always there. And I think if you want the big ones, the special ones, or the uncaught ones or the rarely caught ones, you've got to do something different because they're not daft.
No, definitely. You catch fish on those spots that see the bait all the time, but Dad, every time I go to Zayaki, which is the big fish, one of the premier big fish waters in Europe, it's a long chuck water. And a lot of the spots are long chuck, and everyone I speak to, if I get chatting to somebody, and I always say, where'd you catch your biggest one from though out of here? If they've fished it a lot or they're a local,
kind of bargain.
It's always short in a long chuck swim. I had 3 cut-offs, I had no more line left, I had 40 yards on my reel, I just put it out, on the first shelf. It's always the big one. They might only get 1 bite in the session, but it's a big one, because they learn, don't they, through experience. Like, it's dangerous to eat out there. We'll let all the others, the hungry ones, the ones that just have to eat, we'll let them get caught off the main spots. Maybe once a year, the big ones will turn up with them, when the urge to feed overrides their caution. But it's the same story everywhere, and I think the more so on the long chuck lakes, where everybody's fishing the same spots, because they learn where it's safe, don't they? Quite often it's the biggest fish. They eat more than the others, so they need to find a safer way to eat, otherwise they're going to be the mug.
Yeah. And also when you think, particularly on the long chuck waters, a lot of the time the rod tips are fairly high, and you're a long way out. So as
you've got less line.
Area, 30 yards out, there's no line in the water anymore.
Yeah, and that Zayaki is beautiful because it's like a double shelf that runs at 30 yards. So it's a drop off, then it comes up and then drops again. I had the second biggest fish I've ever had out of there doing exactly that. Found it with a deeper. I just thought I wanted something different with a rod, and I was like, well, that's super interesting. And I had 3 or 4 fish off it in total over a few sessions, and but one of them was my second biggest out of there, I think.
I think that's the thing. You're not going to catch loads, but a lot of the time you'll get a bigger one. So, and if you're in a Big 5 competition, that's the best way to do it. Just go off the bait completely. So, fish. I think fishing off and away from your baited area is a really good way of targeting big fish.
Always, and I can name so many fish. UK fish that the Manchester Park fish angry, that I'd learned that the first year I fished for it. I caught quite a lot of fish considering there's only 30 odd fish in the lake. Probably had 15, 16 runs in under 10 sessions, but the big one got caught next to me. He got caught in the next swim down and crapping my bait out, so it'd definitely been on my spot, but I didn't catch it when I was having it off anyway. So a few years later, when I went back to have another go at it, I thought, I'm not going to fish where the fish are, I'm just going to fish near him. Ended up catching it on the second session or something, just by learning that. And I've seen, I remember David at Cavagnac. You remember David? I don't know if you ever met him. He was the same thing. So he'd put 5-10 buckets out on a spot, and he'd say, put one rod 20 yards away and do not put a single boil around it. Nothing. And your biggest fish of the session would come off that rod.
Yep.
It's
Such a good way of doing it. You've got to put the bait out.
Mm.
That you've got to have a baited spot, and this is. I know when I went to Hungary earlier in the year, it's like we're looking at where we're going to put the baited spot out, and I'm partnered with obviously my fishing partner out there. We've decided to have a baited spot in the middle, and he's like, "Yeah, I'm going to have two," because he wants to put 2 or 3 rods on the spot. It's like happy days. You carry on.
Yeah.
So you do exactly that, because I'm going to fish one just in front of it, one to the side of it, and one about 4 rod lengths behind it, about 10 yards off to the side. And they're the litmus test. When the fish are heavily on the bait and they're competing on it, as soon as he gets bite, happy days. I'll draw back in again, but that one's always going to stay off the side. And as it turned out, it was a really tough trip. There was hardly anything caught. And what was happening, the fish were interested in the bait, but they didn't want to feed heavily. And the only way that you could encourage them to feed was to put food out there, but not fish on the food. Which sounds really weird, that they're either feeding or they're not feeding. But the amount of times that if you're clever with your bait application, you can put a load of bait in to encourage them, but they're not eating it, and just fish behind it.
And another common method trick they do in Croatia is to pop one rod up 0.5 meter off the bait, so just a 50 centimeter hook link. They would go a bit higher, but there's a lot of the lakes have 50 centimeter hook link rule to stop people using zigs. But quite often you'll catch the biggest fishiest session on that rod. So it's over the bait. So the fish are there. They're just feeding off. The big ones are feeding off the bits that the other fish are kicking up. Basically, again, they've learned that take it from the spot on its way down, or third of the way up, or depending how deep it is. And surprising how many times your biggest fish, or if they bite slow up one day, you still keep feeding, just pop them all up.
I remember you just reminded me of something. Going out to Abbey Lakes, you used to be able to use bait boats on there, and sometimes you'd have a bite really quickly when you dropped your rig out of a bait boat, and then you top up with the bait. We'd top up a little bit as well. So even though you know where your spot is, rather than bringing it in, you'd put more bait out over the top of the bait boat, not necessarily dropping a rig with it. And in the end, I thought, you know what, these fish, they were clearly there, but they wouldn't eat. They wouldn't take a zig, or it was hard to fish a zig. But they wouldn't take off the deck as well. It's like, what on earth are we going to do here? And in the end, dropping zigs with a bait boat with a load of pellet round it was the way. And you literally fish a pellet type, a brown hook bait as your zig, and then drop it, and you'd have a bite. Literally, it would drop. The fish would be hitting them on the way down. They wouldn't take it off the bottom. And we could see them swirling on the bait, but you'd never get a pickup.
We discussed the method in last week's Carp cast. Do you know Marcus Watts? He's down your neck of the wood, isn't he, bait maker? He's rolled for like Dynamite and CC Moore and everybody over the years. Got a company down your neck of the woods. But we came up with this almost like a reverse zig method, where you get the buoyancy right and it just falls very slowly through the water. Because we're saying in Croatia and Slovenia, as you know, like most of your bites come while you're spodding, and it's because they know the spod's free food, so they just gather underneath it. I've seen it on echo sounders with the deepers, videos of the fish just coming to it, and there's no bait left. I've poured 10 kilos 20 kilos out of the boat in a bucket and had a bite before I've got back to the bank, and then it will go dead. You have to literally go and put it out again. So we found the way is, you just go through 10 times as much bait if you do it like that. You've just got to little and often. And if nothing's happened for 20 minutes, I've known the match guys on Ontario that you fish. There's an Austrian-German pair that I see on there regular. Every time I go, they seem to be there practicing for a match or whatever. And every time they go, they're trying something different. So the last time I went, he had a timer, so he was using the smallest spawn because everybody uses the big ones, and he had a timer set every 15 minutes. These Germans are like, they're meticulous, aren't they? 24 hours a day, every 15 minutes, he was putting 3 tiny spawns. Because, as you know, over there, it's the biggest 5 fish, isn't it? It's not how many you catch; it's tricking the big ones. Because it's the average of either the top 3 or the top 5, depending on the competition. So it gets you thinking, and as you know, in fishing, basically, he's doing the opposite of what everyone else is doing, is what gets the big ones. Fishing that swim in the corner, nobody fishes, fishing short in a long chuck swim, using making a different noise with the spawn, fishing off the baited spot. Like, if you want to catch the big ones, it's all boils down to the same things. Do something different.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. And also, if you're fishing for pack fish, then if you've got to wade, because I've done this before now. I remember going out to Romania for a competition with Mark Bartlett. We drew an average swim, and it was a big 5 competition, and we absolutely kicked the arse out of it. We caught more than anybody else. We had over 1,000 pounds or 1,000 kilos of fish. We had just over 100, and they were averaging 9 to 11 kilo. But that was the problem. They were averaging 9 to 11 kilo. We finished 17th. Everyone's like, we cannot understand how you've caught so many fish from this peck.
And no big end.
All we were doing was baiting the small ones and keeping the small ones in place.
Yeah.
I went back the following year and I fished it with Harry. We've drawn opposite. This is Tinkerbestia. You know Tinkerbestia.
I know it, yeah.
So when
I've seen your face on a big billboard outside. You and Frank when I drove in.
Well, that was the competition. They called it the best 5.
That's right, yeah.
Big 5, best 5 competition. So the following year I went back with Harry, and Harry was of the same opinion. It's like, well, we've drawn another middle of the road swim, going to get past the traffic, but not necessarily one of the big known swims that's up near the island or down by the dam. Just literally a bog standard swim in the middle. He's like, right, we've got to get the bait in. We'll just wade through. It's like, no, we're not doing that this year. What we're going to do is we're going to bait until we catch 5 fish. We're using 4 rods. What we do, as soon as we've caught 5 fish and they're around about the same size, that 9-10 kilo, we leave one on the baited spot as a gauge. We put one off to one side of it. We put another off to the other side of it just behind. And the other one, I lob in the corner where nobody's going to catch anything from. And a solid bag that goes down the corner. Yeah. So the solid bag that went down the corner, it's like, that's a complete waste. We need to keep fishing. It's like, no, Harry, we don't need to. What we need to do is we need to get rid of these small fish. When the food's gone, they'll go. And almost certainly there will be big fish hanging around the back there. And they're the ones that we'll catch afterwards. Anyway, our average went from 9 to 12s. And then you start catching 12s. So as soon as we're catching 12s, it's like, right, get a little bit more bait in now and see if we can encourage a few more 12-kilo fish to feed. Lo and behold, off they do. And as soon as we fill the card with 12-kilo fish, you drop the bait off, let them go. They disappear, and then you're back on the spot waiting for the bigger ones to come in. And I think the biggest fish came from the pub chucked, not a chance of catching anything, down the right-hand side into Silty Corner with a PVA bag.
I learned that on Lower Tamar Lake in probably 1987. Before I could drive, my mate drove down there in the close season. Those lakes were open, and you could use three rods, and you just turned up in the car park, put your money in an honesty box, pulled a ticket off, and started fishing. So I've gone down with my mate, and I'd been there a few times on holiday with my parents beforehand, so I knew the lake, and there was an old riverbed that ran through it, and it was a banker spot. Once you knew where it was, 50, 60 yards or whatever, you could catch all day. My mate is slinging down the margins. It was driving me mad. I was like, you've got to fish on the spot. Anyway, he ended up catching the biggest fish in the lake. It was 28 pound at the time, so it was quite a big fish for 87 or whenever it was. And it taught me that I always used to catch 6 to 1, fish versus him. Bear in mind we were doubled up, but he didn't do that obvious thing, just he didn't want to listen to me or well, I don't know what it was, but it happened. It's Gary Bay's on Fen Drayton. There used to be a lot of big bream in there at one point. I mean, big bream, the average was 12 to 15 pound, really big, and a good one was 17, 18. You could have one that big most sessions, and this is 15 years ago, 12 years ago or something. Anyway, but you always got punished by the bream. We're towing, 4 rods, 300 yards on braid, and quite often you'd reel all 4 rods in and have a 15-pound bream on in the morning, like because it's extreme fishing. Anyway, he had this method where he would feed the bream with bream bait, pellets, and sacks of stuff, and then he'd stop feeding, and he said he'd always catch carp afterwards, after he'd stopped feeding. And I remember Roger Bacon on Dead Man's in Manchester doing the same thing. So he used to do a campaign every year. He'd fill it in for a couple of weeks, start fishing. There was 2 big ones in there at the time, the halfling and whatever the other one was called. One of them was always the first fish off the spot, and one of them was always the last fish off the spot. So once he'd stopped feeding, once the bait was gone, he'd catch the other one. And it's just learning.
It's such a good way of catching bigger fish. I think there's certain people are good at certain things. We're all good. You might have somebody that's really good at casting. You might have someone that's very accurate at casting. You might have someone that's really riggy. But for me, if you understand bait application,
Mm.
then you can be really selective about how you fish and what you're fishing for. And I think people don't understand well enough the ebb and flow of bait application. If you look at match anglers about how they'll either have a positive or a negative approach. I fished creek lakes really negatively.
Mm.
And when I say negative, it was slow, and I was picking them off one by one really, really slowly. Most other people were on a very aggressive, positive approach because they know there's a load of big fish in there. They're thinking, you know what, the weather's right, let's pile a bait in, sit and wait on it. Well, that's a shit or bust thing.
Mm.
As soon as you've done that, then you've set your stall out. And the problem is that if you haven't caught 3 days into a 5-day match, what you do is you've knackered your chances. And what you then do is you spread your bait all around the swim.
Yeah.
Which was what everyone was doing. It was ridiculous. So, that having that mature knowledge of whether you fish positively or negatively, I think is vital, both in competition and also whether you're fishing for big hits or big fish. And in the competition world, whether it's match fishing, as in sit on a box with a pole style competition, feeder matches, or whether it's a carp match competition, it's bait application so often that wins it.
Yeah.
You can draw the flyer, and you can cock it up by applying your bait wrong.
So, yeah, it's different, like especially that match fishing and fishing abroad, where on average there tended to be a lot more fish. The stocking densities were much higher. You learn a lot more about bait application there because whoever does it the best catches the most, and it will change because, like tomorrow, the guy, you might be tired because you worked all out. I'm not talking about competition, but you pleasure fishing on these sort of places for a week. The guy in the next swim works twice as hard as you because he had a day off yesterday when you were working hard. And he catches more the next day, and you see it. So it's so important. But I guess the sports analogy is what you said about that negative fishing. It's like defensive fishing almost, isn't it? You got attack and defense, and defensive fishing, just casting the bags around, not messing the swim up. And if you're not necessarily got the fish in front of you, you're not in a flyer, peg or whatever, then I guess that defensive approach is the one, isn't it?
You fish a negative match until you're in a position to strike. So what I was looking for was effectively breakaway goals. I'm fishing defensively. I know that all the others are going to go very, very positive. I'm actually fishing defensively. I'm fishing really slow. I'm just trying to nick the odd bite. All I need to do is catch 5 fish. That's all I need to do. And then once I've caught 5 fish, I need to upgrade the smallest ones. That's what I've got to do. So, some people think the best way to catch the biggest 5 in the lake is to stick a shitload of bait in there and catch 20 fish, hoping that 5 are big. If you're in the right peg and it's the right conditions, then that's a great thing to do. However, with a lot of time and only a small number of fish, a negative approach works really, really well. So, but I've got the advantage of having sat behind and with and commentated on some of the best match anglers, as in course fishing match anglers in the world. And there's so much that we can pick up from their attention to detail on bait application. They're different levels to some of the way that we do things. But of course, it's a different game. It's like watching rallying and thinking you can take that into Formula One. You need to understand the principle of what they're doing and apply it to your sport rather than just thinking, I'll do it what they did, because it doesn't work. But, how many, if you've got a really, really strong attacking team like Real Madrid, they were always a real attacking team, and they always used to say, you know what, you might score 4 against us, but we'll score 6 against you. So they were a very, very positive team. When you look at Bayer Leverkusen as a prime example, or maybe Arsenal when they had that year when they were the Invincibles, people used to call them boring Arsenal. Yeah,
Chelsea under Abramovich, it was 1 goal a game, but they never conceded.
No, most boring football that you can imagine, but you can't get through them. And see a chance and they'll slot one in, and it's like, right, that's it, go back to defending.
But the consumer wants to watch Real Madrid knock 7 in, or whoever it is.
Of course they do, but who wins the Champions League?
Yeah.
So it might be Real Madrid, but it might not be. So, and when you apply that to angling, certainly in competition, that positive-negative approach is really, really worth looking at.
Just, we've been almost an hour and a half, but just while you touched on England there, it doesn't seem to have had the same engagement. I know you, politics-wise, and you're the master of not going too far in over anyone's fence, but I've not had any England engagement. I think I saw them once because they were in Croatia and I was in Croatia last year, like, and they were on a lake that I wasn't aware of.
Yeah.
But they don't seem to have had the engagement. It seemed to be a brand everybody knew about and got behind when you were in charge. Like, you know, I couldn't even tell you the name of whoever's managing them now. Like,
Yeah.
what's the state of play with the England team? Would you say? Well,
It's a difficult one. You know, I'm not saying that the guys there now don't love it. It's just a changing of the guard. You know, the things change, don't they? Times change. I did my bit. I was hugely passionate about it, and I think again it was one of those things that the era was right. Um, the now what's happening with it? They're still doing what they're doing. They've got home nations events. They've got
that's my
international
point. No,
events.
I don't
They've
know when
got
the next competition is. I've seen no advertising. If I wanted to get behind them, I wouldn't know where to look now.
yeah. Yeah, I don't. I honestly, I don't know who's doing what with the bits and bobs there. Obviously, you know, Neil Rivers is the manager. He's a lovely fella. He was part of my team anyway, so he stepped up to take over. And they just do what they do. But it's tricky because success breeds success, and I had a lovely era there. It was fantastic because we went in being hated. And nobody liked England beforehand. We were in the doldrums. We had a great start with Spain, turned it round. Just it was right at the time. Everything just fell right. The tide's gone out. It's a different team now. I don't know. I can't comment, Jay. I don't know.
Yeah. And the general politics of angling at the minute. Obviously, I know you did a bit with the Angling Trust DA and stuff. Like, obviously the economic crisis is having an effect on everything retail, but the health of angling in general, as far as the government are concerned, right down to grassroots level, where we at?
I've retired from all of that.
Okay. I'm just trying to get a bit of dirt out of you, just something.
I've got splinters in my arse, I can tell you. There are there's all sorts going on. The big thing at the moment is the pollution issue. There's an awful lot of shit being pumped into rivers by water companies who are just unregulated. They're supposed to be regulated. They're just not. Ofwat is useless. It's not worth the paper it's written on. The government are doing absolutely nothing at all to clamp down on it. The Environment Agency are seemingly impotent. I'm not going to say powerless. They've got whatever power they want, but they're seemingly impotent. And it's just going round and round and round in circles. And you've got corporate bodies that are making a huge amount of profit out of water, and they're not reinvesting back into it. They want the government to bail them out. They want all sorts of money to be put back into it, and yet they want to take huge bonuses themselves. And what's happening is our rivers are suffering as a result. There is an awful lot of shit going in the rivers. That said, the Barwell record's just been caught. The river roach fishing is absolutely fantastic. Some of for big fish, the fishing is absolutely phenomenal at the moment. But it's the worry is the recruitment coming through, because there's so many problems that are being faced by the rivers. The Angling Trust, bless them, they get battered left, right, and centre. The Angling Trust are doing what they can. And there was a big march in London not so long ago, and Penny Gain, the head of Fish Legal, did a speech there. And I thought she was absolutely fantastic. It was a really good speech. She's got as many people as she can behind her. There's a lot of people from lots of different areas there. There's a lot more awareness now of this issue. But ultimately, whether you're blue, green, yellow, or red, it takes a government to do something about it. And the government have got to take notice. This government, the last government did virtually nothing. The new government have said they're going to do as much as they possibly can. They're going to solve the problem. And you know what? They've done virtually nothing as well. So it's a really, really difficult one.
The Otters debate seems to have gone now. Is that just because private fisheries have all fenced them, and the rest of it just is what it is?
Yeah, I think it's got to the stage now where it's an unwinnable argument. There's no question that nature needs to be. We live in a managed society. We live in a managed country. So as a result, whichever way anybody likes it, whether they're pro or anti, unfortunately, we're a managed environment. And
Mm.
as a result, there has to be some management. Now, depending on what that management is and what it looks like, at the moment, the management is that they've got to be fenced out. What we're seeing now, and time tells ultimately, is that more and more carp fisheries in particular are being protected, but more and more rivers are struggling.
Mm.
Because obviously, there's more predators around, whatever they look like, and there's less food for them. So, I suppose ultimately the naturalists' argument will come to the fore that nature will find a balance.
Yeah.
But there's an awful lot more things dying at the moment. That bird life is really struggling. Coots, moorhens, they're struggling. There's been loads of incidences of bird life disappearing from certain rivers because of predation.
Right.
And that's because there's no fishing there anymore.
Mm.
But what will happen is the birds will go, and then there won't be any food. So then the predators will go, and then what will happen is it will recolonize again, and the cycle will start again.
Yeah.
But at what cost?
Yeah.
Ultimately, everything has got to die. The prey has got to die. The spectators have got to die, and eventually the predators have got to die. Because there isn't enough food, so they'll end up killing each other, or they get killed on the roads as they're traveling around everywhere. There's a significant increase, I believe, in the number of road deaths now, because they're having to move around an awful lot more. So, it's a tricky one. The problem is that, and this is my big bugbear with all of this, that you've always got green on green politics. That you and I are both environmentalists, but my green's better than your green. and you see it across the board, that unfortunately, rather than and this is where the water companies dumping so much sewage into the rivers is actually pulling everybody together, because the canoeists are talking to the anglers,
Yeah.
and the naturalists and the bird lovers are talking to the fish lovers, and the wild swimmers are now getting involved, and the paddleboarders are getting involved. And normally we'd all be at each other's throats saying, you shouldn't fish on here, well, you shouldn't paddleboard on here, well, we don't want you canoeing, hang on a second, you can't swim in that. Actually, we've all got a common enemy.
It's a good point. Yeah.
So it's numbers that will help. But believe it or not, there was a march that had Chris Packham side by side with anglers.
Right.
I mean, they are poles apart, but it's a common enemy. The problem is, as soon as that's solved, what will happen is we'll all turn on each other again.
It's always the way, isn't it? As your common enemies and all that. It's happened throughout life. So to leave on a happy note, what's happening for Christmas? Yeah. You got any fishing planned? Anything?
I've got loads of fishing planned. I'm going roach fishing on the Avon tomorrow.
Okay.
So it's back in its banks. So that's thing number one. I'm going to get a few different carp trips in. I have had a magnificent year so far, catching loads of decent fish at home. There's a target mid-40-pound common that I would love to catch before the end of the season. And you know what? I'm just looking forward to a really, really nice winter's fishing for all sorts of things. Whether it's carp day ticket or whether it's going out on the rivers or whatever. I fish for a little bit of everything now. I do like fishing with the seasons. There'll be the odd trip coming out. I had a fantastic result from Poland not so long ago as well. I had the biggest fish out of Poland. That was amazing.
Nice.
It's been great. Long may that continue as well.
Maybe it is your old age pheromones. It's just kicking in. You can't do wrong everywhere.
It might be that, or I might identify as something that I'm actually not, and it could be that's it. Yeah.
Some years you have fantastic years fishing where you can't do wrong. You go from lake to lake and catch them all. I've had odd years like that in the past, and I always think some years like mosquitoes leather me, and some years they won't touch me. Maybe there is just some years you exert some natural, pheromone hunter scent type thing. I don't know. Maybe it's cyclical again.
I don't know. I think part of it is when you're on it. When you're on it and your head's in the game, and your gear's always ready. And not only is your gear always ready, but your casting's bang on.
Yeah.
And not only that, but your rigs are cock on, and you're just on it and in it. And this year has been a really consistent year, and I put that down partly to two things. Number one is, having retired from England last year, it's freed up an awful lot of headspace, which is quite a strange thing to say, because even though it didn't take up a huge amount of my time, it took up a huge amount of my headspace.
Yeah.
And Fordy, my co-presenter, used to say this to me, and it's quite funny that a bloke's head in particular has only got a certain number of bubbles in it, and all of these bubbles have things in, and it might be beer, fishing, work, money, birds, whatever it might be. There's all of these different things in there, and sometimes one bubble will expand and others will disappear. But you need to get some out of the way to clear headspace.
Definitely.
And having that headspace, just the pressure going, that work settling down a little bit, being employed actually as well made a huge difference, because I'm working as hard as I've ever worked, but it's a slightly different pressure to what it was before. So there's a huge pressure being self-employed. There's a very different pressure being employed, and just the fishing heads in the game. And it's lovely because I can go a month, pick the rods back up, and it's straight back again. So sometimes you've got a bit of ring rust and you need to get back into it. But
confidence as well breeds success, doesn't it? It's like if when everything's going well, you're expecting to catch when you go to the lake, and there's something about that, whether you some juju or something, I don't know, but it definitely, in everything I've ever done, from playing poker to catching fish, I either know I'm going to do it or no, I'm not going to do it. Like it's one or the other.
If you're confident, you've got a decent pair of trousers on, you've had a shower and a shave, you've got a splash of the best aftershave on, you're going out on the town, the chances are it's going to be a good night.
Yeah.
If you're still in your work jeans and you're a bit knackered, it's probably not going to be. And all of these things just make it that much better.
Yeah.
So
my mojo's back, but I still have 2 blanks, so I don't know.
Oh, it'll come. That's weather.
Yeah.
But it's been a pleasure. It's been a pleasure as ever.
Good to catch up, Rob, and hopefully we're not getting cancelled for anything we've said here. So
that's not my problem, is it? If they're cancelling, then that's a matter for them, not for me.
Thank you so much for your time.
Look after yourself, mate.
Speak soon, Rob. Bye-bye.